Hello, John. Welcome, welcome. Yes, here we are. I'm just going to give it a minute to fill up. We did start early. Um, when you said let's go, I was ready to go because we only have you for a certain amount of time, and why not? Let's have fun. Let's talk about the woo. I'm so excited. I watched your interview with Dave Scott on Wednesday, SOR. It was great seeing you back after a long hiatus. So thank you. Thank you for returning and thank you for coming into the UFO community here. So just another thing to bring up while we're doing this is when you're not talking, it's good to hit that button and turn your mic off just so that there isn't any weird feedback. And then when we bring up speakers later on, um, it'll be easier for them to hear and listen. But yeah, so I guess, you know what? Let's get started. Are you cool with that, John?
Yes.
Fantastic. So let me introduce you. You are a lifelong enthusiast of the phenomenon, which you have personally experienced and about which you were also personally informed. You served from 1984 to 2009 in the CIA Directorate of Science and Technology, the Directorate of Intelligence, and the ODNI National Counterproliferation Center. You served in the offices whose predecessors and current successor have held the UFO portfolio. And just reading that gives me chills. You're specializing in ballistic missile defense, Westum systems radar, technical collection operations. John was the chief of the electronic intelligence analyst branch and the electric intelligence laboratory at CIA during the period when the intelligence community was investigating the light orb phenomena in the years preceding OSAP. John is the recipient of the Career Intelligence Medal awarded by former CIA Director Leon Panetta. He is a member of the Association of Former Intelligence Officers, the Central Intelligence Retirees Association, and the 1947 Society. You have given 25 years to the CIA, 6 years in the Navy, and a total of 31 years of service. I thank you for your service, John, and I also thank you for your courage coming forward and openly discussing the UFO phenomena. I also want to send a big thank you to Jason Sands, who graciously put us in touch so that we could be here this evening. So yes, first quick question is, what is the 1947 Society?
The 1947 Society was so named because 1947 was the founding year of CIA. The Defense, the National Security Authorization Act was signed in the August of 1947, and then CIA itself was founded on September 18, 1947. So the Retirees Alumni Association is called the 1947 Society.
Amazing. I thought it might have something to do with Roswell.
Well, that's conjecture. So Roswell happened in July of 1947. The Authorization Act was signed in August of 1947. CIA was founded in the September of 1947, along with the Department of Air Force.
Yes, all very interesting that all of this went down at that time. All right, so I have to ask. A lot of people in the community are asking. During a UFO conference a few weeks ago, you, Jason Sands, Science Bob, experienced a woman. You experienced what I'd like to say she is the black-eyed woman in the hallway, and we were wondering if we could get your testimony to this. Get the third testimony to the story.
Yes, we were in a hallway adjoining the exhibition and vendor area of the conference, and we were just engrossed in conversation. And a woman in our party was outside, and another woman walked in and tried to close the door behind her. and the woman outside in our party chased after her, uh, calling to her, shouting to her, and the woman who had that blank stare, looked to me to be very lifeless. If you can imagine someone walking like a robot, making 90-degree turns and just walking straight ahead with a blank stare, absolutely no life in her eyes at all. And she made a left turn up the other hallway. Two women were chasing her, and these two women reported that she just disappeared. I did not see her disappear. I did see her walk into our little hallway. And so that's all I know what happened. The actual disappearance was witnessed by these two other women, one of whom was a conference speaker.
Got it. I'm glad that you got to clear that up because we had heard that you had witnessed that she had disappeared. And so I was like, all right, we now have to get that story. But now I guess we have to get the other woman from the conference in here and on another day and ask her some questions. Um, so, some things that you can't talk about are the Nazis. This is all, I got all of this from your Dave Scott interview. Military abductions, aka My Labs, 2027, and Bob Lazar. Can you talk around it? Is that possible? In the
Oh,
sense,
absolutely.
okay,
And
cool.
I
Okay.
have talked around, excuse me, um, allergies here in southern Arizona, lots of dust. Um, I have talked around it. It's not that I cannot talk about it. It's just that CIA was uncomfortable with me bringing up these subjects. So in my earlier interviews and in my 74 slides in my PowerPoint presentation for Project Unity back in 2021, I did talk about the Nazis. So it wasn't a problem. Talked about reptilians, that wasn't a problem. But CIA was very uncomfortable with some of the talk about 2027 in particular, and military abductions specifically, because military abductions might involve criminal activity, and it was suggested that I not get involved in anything like that.
Okay. Well, I'd like to touch upon so the 2027 thing. So I want to know what you can tell us about Victoria Whitney of the Omicron Commonwealth. She talks about 2027. Her story being that she was taken off the street at the Navy Yard in DC and was told of a ship or fleet of ships that is projected to arrive in 2027.
I know Victoria Whitney. I met her at the International UFO Congress in 2022, where I was a guest speaker. And I met her team as well, the other Navy scientists accompanying her. That's all I know about her. She has a website called Omicron Commonwealth.
And she's ex-Navy, am I correct?
She was a former Navy scientist. That is correct.
Okay. Yeah, I'm curious because there's so much, about 2027. So like I guess my other question is like should we be preparing like on our own, us little people here, should we be prepping for, just pretty much we should be prepping for any event. I live in LA, earthquake might happen, but quite possibly for some kind of event to happen in 2027. Is there any advice you can give us on that?
Well, I'll give you the advice of what I'm doing. Absolutely nothing. I'm just living my life day by day with my wife and trying to make ends retirement income and um, just pursuing my hobbies and having fun in retirement. I'm not concerned about these kind of things, but this topic has come up, as I said, on Spaced Out Radio within the channeler community, and I am not at all tied that well into the channeler community. I don't follow, for example, Bashar, who's channeled by Daryl Anka, and the other channelers who are channeling specific entities. I have no idea what that. It's curious to me. But for me, I don't obsess about 2027. It's just interesting that it comes up in conversation within that community. So I don't know what sources they have. It could be a message to them personally. That's probably what I suspect through their channeling, but I've not had any kind of contact with any entity describing 2027 whatsoever.
This makes me feel so much better. I would like to know that I could continue every day not worrying about preparing for any kind of large event coming in 2027. Thank you. I just want to also tell the audience that I am not accepting anyone up to the stage yet. I have prepared some questions of my own, and then I will absolutely invite you up to the stage to ask a question and possibly a follow up, respectfully, of course. But yeah, I mean, we did start early. I'm taking advantage of that because I feel like I know that there's things that you can't tell us, and I get that. I'd love your opinion on things because you've been around, you've seen things. I had a phone call with my dad today, and I read your resume out to him, and he was like, "Whoa," and I was like, "I know, I mean." We've lived very different lives, you and I. I've never been on the inside. I don't know what that's like. I can't imagine it. So really, it's just your opinion on things, and if you want to go any further than that, that is up to you. But I'd love to bring this up to you because I recently came across a 𝗂𝘁𝘁𝗃 Jr. interview, and I believe that it was done around 2019. And as you know, 𝗂𝘁𝘁𝗃 Jr. is the son of Colonel Philip J. Corso. He was being interviewed by the Kevin Moore Show. And in this interview, he states that he does not believe it's a UFO cover up, that he believes it's a time travel cover up. I would love to get your perspective on this, John.
I attended a conference back in 2004. It was hosted by 𝗬𝗏𝘂𝗃, and it was called the X Conference, Exopolitics Conference, held in Gaithersburg, Maryland. I attended along with a CIA friend of mine, and since it's local to DC, it was easy to get to. And Philip Corso Jr., I believe he expounded on that the Roswell craft was a time travel machine. And he was roundly criticized by the UFO community, by the other speakers there who did not believe that at all. And my recollection was that he was, that is, Philip Corso Jr., was very disturbed by the reception he received from the UFO community, from the other speakers, and he abruptly left the conference. That's what I know about that. So, as far as Philip Corso Jr. is concerned, apparently his father might have told him that it was time travel, might have told him that the actual craft was a time travel machine of some sort. But other than that, I don't know too much about Philip Corso Jr. I've read his father's book and I found it fascinating. I found it to be believable in that I know that the intelligence community has seeded its technology, not necessarily NHI technology, but just its products of science and engineering to industry. But I don't know too much about the time travel aspect other than I hear inklings of that the time travel aspect is part of the phenomenon.
Yes, I'm starting to look into this as well, and I'm starting to piece together things that if we were to say that if we were to put our woo hats on, that there's a lot of things that connect here. One of the things that Corso Jr. brings up is the Roswell crash, that it crashed in 1947, correct? And that is like the main craft itself crashed in Roswell 1947, but that pieces of the craft actually crashed in Corona 1957. Have you heard of that?
I've heard about the crash at Corona. I believe there's a book written. I don't know by whom, but I've heard of that particular incident, but I really didn't investigate it or look into it at all.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I'm curious because this is something that's been coming up lately with a lot of people that are coming in and out. And I'll go with this other part of it where I'm looking at quite possibly remote viewing and astral projection as being a form of time travel. Like, for instance, um, when McGonagall was looking at Mars, and saw the destruction, and then they asked him to go back, millions of years before that to when there was actually people there, and to me. And then they recognized him, like when he was standing there in the CIA declassified document. They recognize McGonagall, and the person talking to McGonagall as he's remote viewing there. He says, "Do they see you?" And McGonagall says, "Yes, they see me." What do they think you are? They think I'm a ghost. My question is, do you think that that could possibly, like, it just in your opinion, does that sound to you like a form of time travel?
I believe remote viewing has no limits of time and space, that all of it is present, prior, present, and future events are all possible to be visited. So I think that could be a possibility. Uh, I know that a shout out to physicist Dr. Jack Sarfati. He worked with CIA in the early years doing some of this engineering work for CIA. And when he was a teenager, I believe in 1953, he received a phone call with a mechanical voice on the other end of the line telling him about that he will be prominent in researching the technology, and that this voice, according to Dr. Safadi, was an artificial intelligence entity from the future. And so that's his story. For me, I personally, without any documentary evidence, but this is a personal feeling that I have. And so don't say that CIA says this, because CIA doesn't say anything about this. But my personal feeling is that some of what we're seeing could be AI from the future warning us of some of the mistakes we're making with AI in the present. That don't do this because something bad will happen, and we're warning you about your conduct of AI. So that could be a possibility. But again, that's just a personally held belief. So just take it as like my personal opinion, but with behind it, there's absolutely no, I can't produce any factual evidence for that. It's like a religious belief, people have religious beliefs, and I guess you can challenge people's personal beliefs, but I don't like doing that. It's a personally held belief, and if it works for them, that's fine. If it helps them get through life and cope with life, that's fine. So that's the way I take it.
No, I love that. I mean, my boyfriend does not believe in any of the UFO stuff, and he's so sweet to still be dating me after I have immersed myself in this. So yeah, no, I totally get that. I totally understand. So regarding that, I want to do a follow up because uh, Jack Sarfati was amazing and came into an X Space like a couple of months ago. Red Panda Koala gave him space, and he came in and he spoke with us about time travel. So a lot of people might not have been there. So I love that you retold the story when he was 13 years old and experienced that. They also told him he was special and that he would reunite with a bunch of other people they were connecting him with 20 years later, which he ended up doing that. So yeah, so I mean, it's quite interesting how that all works out. But something also that Jack Sarfati, Tim Taylor, Ron Pandolfi, Grant Cameron, Jason Giorgiani have all talked about is portals,
Yes.
uh, also referenced as jump rooms, where you can move between worlds. Giorgiani talks about one that he has seen where it takes him, or he said that he didn't do it, but he knew that if you took it, you could get to Mars underground. Have you heard of this? And what are your thoughts?
I've heard of it, but I've never experienced anything that could be considered a so-called jump room. In fact, if a trained remote viewer, no matter where he or she might be located, and then remote views something on a distant world or distant time, past, present, or future, that location where the remote viewer is sitting can be considered a so-called jump room because they're jumping from this 3D reality to some other reality that will be difficult to explain. So as far as a jump room as portals, no, I've not heard of that being anything that I can point to that I've personally experienced. I would add one thing that there is some talk in the community that such a jump room was located at the Hughes facility in El Segundo, California. Um, I actually been to that facility, but it was no longer owned by Boeing. And so I had a complete tour of that facility where a so-called jump room was located, according to some witnesses. But I was in the top secret SCI spaces in that Boeing facility, and I didn't encounter anything like a jump room.
Did
So I was talking with Boeing executives and engineers about a certain satellite program that Boeing was doing for the intelligence community, and jump rooms never came up. I did see something called a shake and bake room, a large chamber where Boeing would put an entire satellite and subject it to all kinds of physical and thermal stresses to simulate the extremes of space. And it's called shake and bake because they literally like heated that chamber to extremely high temperature and just some kind of spring arrangement or whatever just shook it to see what would break. That I saw, but something like a jump room, I have no idea what that might be. In another sense, as far as portals are concerned, you mentioned Victoria Whitney. If you go on the Omicron Commonwealth site, she does talk about portals, that they mapped a significant number of portals, 40 plus portals, if I recall. When I asked Victoria Whitney about portals, she told me that um, the portals are in space, and the portals might be, for example, in the vicinity from Earth looking out into space. The portal might be within the perspective of the Pleiades constellation, but the beings going in and out of that portal are not necessarily Pleiadians. Same with Arcturus, the star system. There could be a portal there, not on Arcturus, but up in space, where behind it, it looks like the Arcturus star system resides. And so there might be beings going in and out of there, but they're not necessarily Arcturans. Um, that's what she said. So you need to perhaps get her on someday and have her explain portals.
I absolutely, I will. John Strader, who I believe is in the audience, he met her at Contact in the Desert last year, and was trying to get her in a space, but she was so busy. So maybe, John, we can work on that. I'm gonna have some follow-up questions. John, thank you for sending me in that direction. Really, you're helping me out with just my own personal research right now. So I'm very grateful. But so saying all of that, I have to ask this question. In Dave Scott interview last Wednesday on April 23rd, it was Spaced Out Radio, you stated, quote unquote, controlled narrative suits the government just fine because they are not ready to be openly transparent. And they will never be ready to be openly transparent because, in order to do so, we would have to reveal what we did with the technology and that the technology gives the US a strategic advantage over our adversaries. Later on in the interview, you then stated, the one technology I know about would prevent World War III from happening. And I'm just curious if you think it's time travel or something, if that's part of that.
I can say it's not time travel, but I can't say what it is. Um, the only clue I can give and stay within my non-disclosure agreements and to stay true to protecting the compartments related to this is think about um, what we might have exploited from the entire gamut of what, what we know in the UFO narrative, specifically Maelstrom, for example, where apparently some technology was used to trip all those Minuteman II ballistic missiles offline. And so if the Air Force researched exactly how that may have occurred, they could have reverse engineered that. I can say that most people will jump to electromagnetic pulses, EMP interference. It's not that, something else. But if we can prevent um, intercontinental ballistic missiles with nuclear warheads from being launched, then we can prevent an outright nuclear World War III. It may not prevent war, but the chances of it being going nuclear will be lessened if the nuclear devices will not work. So I'll just leave it at that. And I think it was interesting that I hear that on the Russian side, some of their missiles were actually activated. That is, they were ready to launch and they had no control over the launch sequence at that point. In our case, it is not true that the nuclear warheads were disabled. The nuclear warheads at Maelstrom, those nuclear warheads were still active. That is, they're still viable. However, the ability to launch the missile, physically launch the missile, was disabled because certain circuits in each of those missiles were disabled. So in order to launch a missile, everything has to be green, ready to go. A green board ready to launch. And this certain type of module, which I know about, was disabled in each of those missiles. And the chances of that happening are extremely rare and probably improbable um, for this particular module to go out on each of those missiles because they're independent of each other. So something knocked out a certain module in the deputy commander's console to prevent that to prevent them from being ready to launch. So they just tripped off. Also, the other thing that happened to those Minuteman II missiles, underneath where the reentry vehicles or warheads are located, there's a ring underneath that. And in that ring um, was where the computers, the inertial navigation computers were located for each missile. And some of those missiles back in the day actually used hard drives, like 6,000 RPM hard drives. And some of those hard drives went offline as well, in addition to this module failing. The Air Force actually did some research and published, and it's hard to find, and I had a copy of it and I have to go find it again. They actually researched what happened. And so they troubleshot the malfunctions, and they came up with some solutions of how to prevent those malfunctions from occurring again. Um, but they did not in any way in that official Air Force report anyway mention anything that the security above ground saw, the objects that the security folks witnessed. They left all of that out of the official Air Force report. So the Air Force knew something happened, but they weren't forthcoming as to what the security saw. Now that happened on May 16th, 1964. On May 17th, 1964, I'm sorry, 67, May 16th, 1967. On May 17th, 1967, Maelstrom received the Minuteman II number 1000. So up to that point, they had 999 Minuteman II missiles in the silos. And the 1000th missile arrived the following day to great fanfare and absolutely no mention of the previous day's events were ever recorded in the festivities of welcoming this new missile, which was planted into Maelstrom, was into the silo about a month or so later. What I find interesting that the same year, a few months later, I believe it occurred in June of 1967, President Lyndon Baines Johnson spoke to his counterpart, 𝗓𝘁𝗍𝗂𝗰𝘁𝗶cie Kosygin of the Soviet Union. And President Johnson proposed that we need to look at disarming our nuclear forces, of controlling the numbers of nuclear forces. So I find that interesting that he had this discussion for the first time with the Soviet leader months after what happened at Maelstrom. And I have no documentation to connect President Johnson's proposal to 𝗓𝘁𝗍𝗂𝗰𝘁𝗍𝗂 Kosygin with what happened in Maelstrom at all. But I just find that to be an interesting footnote of history.
I agree. Harold Malcolm had stated, or and his daughter as well, that LBJ was read in when JFK was read in back in 1962 in December. And do you think that LBJ continued to have daily updates regarding the UFO phenomena when he was president? Or do you think they started to peel back that information from the president?
Well, where he would get that information would be from CIA, because CIA at that time was the author of the President's Daily Brief. And so what went on in the world, anywhere in the world, would be in the President's Daily Brief. So unless we can go into the LBJ library and look up the PDBs that may be on file that have been unclassified, it'll be hard to say. But I have heard that every president since Truman has had some briefing about UFOs. Not necessarily the program within the United States to reverse engineer UFOs, but the fact that we were able to detect and track UFOs.
I'm taking all of this in. Okay, I want to slide since I brought up Kennedy. I'd like to just slide over to that to this questioning. So, in Michael Salas's book Kennedy's Last Stand, he gives us the foundation that JFK was briefed on UFOs by James Forrestal before he was elected into Congress in 1946. Harold Malcolm, who just recently passed, has come forward on his deathbed stating that JFK's assassination was connected to UFOs. His daughter, 𝗵𝘁𝗶𝘁𝗲 confirming in her Substack that JFK, like I stated just earlier, was officially briefed on UFOs in 3 locations on December 7th, 1962. Believe I remember you saying last week that you had the pleasure of speaking with Harold Malgrim. Can you please give me your thoughts on JFK's assassination, his connections with UFOs, and possibly a window into what you might have discussed with Harold?
I never talked to Harold Malgrim. I talked to his daughter.
Thank you for clarifying.
And so I don't know what Harold Malgrim might have known about Kennedy's briefing at all on UFOs. I doubt that being briefed on UFOs would trigger an assassination event like that unless he wanted to share that information with the Soviet Union. But briefing a president on UFOs, that wouldn't have caused him to have that process to begin. And also, um, an operation like that requires a lot of planning, and you just can't do that within a few weeks. And so some people are saying that, well, um, you know, Kennedy wanted to share this information. He some visit he made before November 1963 on that in that same year, that he had some kind of briefing or he went to some facility and saw something and wanted to share that with the Soviet Union. Um, I may be misquoting the facts, but in general, I'm just giving you the gist of what I've heard.
Yes, you're talking
You
about
can
the memo that was 10 days before he was assassinated.
you cannot do an operation that complicated in 10 days. It would require years and years of preparation.
Yes, especially because he was actually supposed to be assassinated in Florida and Chicago. There were 2 other cities that he was supposed to be assassinated in, um, and he wasn't, according to the research that I have done. So staying on this topic. You talked about and I'll bring it back to JFK. You talked about how we actually worked with China. We built was it underground bases with them. We set up communicate some kind of satellite communication system to track UFOs. You talked about it last week. So my thought process is, if Kennedy was so, do you think that his assassination had anything to do with UFOs, or do you think it was strictly was the fact that, you know, he did know about it, in earlier 1946, so he had known about it, at least I don't know 17, 18 years prior to his presidency. Um, but do you think that he was speaking with Russia that he wanted to share? Like that's the main when people say his assassination was tied to UFOs, that's the main thing that
Mm.
he wanted to work with Russia. Uh,
Well, let's unpack that.
yes.
There's a lot to unpack. First of all, regarding China, no, we did not do what you just said. We didn't go to that extent. What we did was we wanted to collect against the Soviet ballistic missile program. The Soviet Union was launching ballistic missiles, and at that time, the best place to track these ballistic missiles would have been from the ground looking up. We were trying to collect what's known as telemetry from these missiles because telemetry would tell us the performance of these missiles. We know how to process Soviet telemetry in order to determine how much fuel the missile carries, something known as throw weight, and then also the accuracy of the missile. These characteristics of a ballistic missile system that would enable us to counter that particular weapon. So it was mostly collecting signals. Along with that, we have detected the uh, concurrent presence of these domes of light accompanying the missile, which the analysts at Foreign Technology Division at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base thought to be ballistic missile countermeasures deployed by the Soviet Union. So we wanted to see what that would look like. And so we had an electro-optical sensor, that is something that collects infrared as well as signals. So that was the level of cooperation with our counterparts in China. As far as uh, that being the sharing of information with Russia, that alone would not have triggered the assassination. We have to remember that there was strong opposition against President Kennedy, particularly in certain states, particularly in the South. They strongly opposed his presidency because he was starting policies in terms of civil rights. And there was a lot of opposition to his domestic policies. There was opposition by the Pentagon because they felt that Kennedy should have militarily invaded Cuba. And they were upset that he withdrew support from the Cuban nationals who landed at the Bay of Pigs, that he withdrew critical air and naval support from that invasion, which caused the invasion to fail. And during the time when there were SS-4 missiles on Cuba, for example, Strategic Air Command General 𝗓𝘁𝗿𝗂 wanted to bomb Cuba with nuclear weapons, and Kennedy opposed that. So already there was a lot of opposition to the Kennedy administration, both domestically and also internationally, as far as US policies are concerned. That plus maybe the idea that we should disarm our nuclear missiles was the final last straw. And then add to that, season that with sharing with the sharing of our nuclear capabilities with the Soviets, and trying to like combine our strategic forces together so that we can prevent an accidental triggering of World War III. Add to that sharing UFO information. So I don't believe that UFO information itself, sharing of UFO information itself, would have triggered anything like an assassination attempt, but bringing online the animosity toward his administration, particularly from organized crime, with his brother, the Attorney General, going after organized crime after the various mafia figures did favors for the intelligence community, did favors for CIA in keeping the Italian communists out of power. Add to that the prosecution of mafia figures in the United States by the Department of Justice, by Attorney General Robert F. Kennedy. You add that to the mix, and there was a lot there on the plate of opposition to his administration, that something finally crossed the line and said, we'll go with this plan. And in order to do that plan, you have to get cooperation from the incoming administration, which would have been the vice president, Lyndon Baines Johnson. Some kind of cooperation, because if Johnson was briefed and he wanted to continue the policies of his predecessor, then you will have to assassinate the next president of the United States. And that did not occur. So I look with a wary eye toward any narrative that casts the assassination purely in terms of the UFO story. We need to also incorporate the history of the Kennedy administration and the opposition of many, many, many sectors of America against the Kennedy administration.
I absolutely agree with you, especially even Vietnam itself. Um, there's many levels. Okay, I'd like to. I would love to change and move over to my next question, which is in reference to Amy Eskridge. Her father was one of a handful of people who independently discovered anti gravity. She grew up in the infamous area of Huntsville, Alabama. Her father taught her his anti gravity discovery, and then she, sadly committed suicide. But before her death, she talked about creating, or she has drawings, or she had done some work on there being 3D holographic med beds. Have you heard of this? And what are your thoughts?
I did not know Amy Eskridge. I knew of her after the fact, when she was deceased. I've not heard that she committed suicide. Um, I don't know what your source was, but I would just say she died under extraordinary circumstances, and I don't know if it was by her own hand. Um, but I've heard of these so-called med beds, mostly in ufology lore, but I've never heard of anything like that. I was never professionally informed that such things exist.
Okay, fascinating. Okay. Um Interesting. I am learning so much. I'm so glad. Are you doing well? Do you need a break? Are you okay for
No, I'm fine.
Okay, cool. Cool, cool, cool. Okay. My next question is in regards to Tim Taylor. He is about as elusive as you are, John Ramirez. We can't believe that you were in a space with us this evening. Tim Taylor has been connected to Chris Bledsoe, Diana Pasulka, Grant Cameron. He has, worked with NASA. He's supposed to be very high up. He was able to get into the Vatican archives, which is a very hard thing to do. What are your thoughts on Tim Taylor, on who he is, and what is his purpose in all of this? What is your opinion?
I really don't know him. I only know of him because Diana Pasulka um, talked about him using his pseudonym, Tyler. Other than that, I don't know anything about him. I would say that when I had a LinkedIn account, he followed me. And when I think he realized who I was, he unfollowed me. That's my only association with Tim Taylor. I don't know who he is or anything about him other than what Diana Pasulka has revealed.
Amazing. That's interesting. So he learned who you were, and then he was like, "I'm out of here."
Basically, yeah, he no longer followed me. Now I remember his LinkedIn page because he was standing in front of a rocket, probably at Cape Canaveral, and he was in some kind of astronaut apparel, I would say. Um, and that's all I remember. But he unfollowed me shortly thereafter. You have to ask him.
I will. And at this rate, we have to now get Tim Taylor in here to ask some good questions too. He's very even now more elusive than you are. Um, Okay, Tim Taylor. Got him. Okay, now here's a good one. The moon. I've got to ask because this is a pretty big statement that you made last week. You said that there are reptilians that have been and are currently occupying the dark side of the moon. My question to you is, how do you know this? How are they able to exist? Actually, my dad's question is, how are they able to exist there? I asked him if ask a question. So that one's for my dad. I'm curious if we can dig into this one.
Yes, I learned about this from a CIA officer who's highly placed to know. And also, this is not so much a stretch if you consider the moon to be an artificial body. That is, it's its own craft, let's say.
So the moon itself is its own craft.
Well, yeah, I use that term craft, not that it's flying around and warping from here to there, but it's some kind of artificial construction. And because it's an artificial construction, and because it's sun-synchronous to us at all times on the far side, which we cannot see um, as we see on the front side facing us, you can hide a lot of things. And for those who are incredulous about that, I would say just look at Papoose Lake. Apparently or allegedly, there is something called a Site 4 with hangar doors there. You can look at any kind of mapping application you want and you will not find them. So something there is being obscured from our detection. And I think that needs to be explored more, particularly in NASA's files, which they have never released at all about exactly what the astronauts witnessed on the moon.
No, they haven't. They've been very mum. And in James Fox's documentary, The Program, uh, James Fox talks to them briefly, but one of the things the director of the program, whose name is escaping me right now, says, We're going to be very transparent." And I think at this point we know that they're not going to be transparent at all. Um, so there is a theory that Joe McGonigal, when he was that he the people that he remote viewed on Mars, that during the remote viewing session, he was told that they could no longer live on Mars anymore, that the planet became inhabitable, and that they had a spaceship leave Mars to go and find a more suitable home for them, and they were waiting to be rescued. Do you think that quite possibly, I mean, if we're really putting our woo hats on here, uh, that the moon was created by the people that used to exist millions of years ago on the moon? On
Oh, like
Mars, sorry.
the Martians created the moon?
Yes, this is a
I
theory.
don't know about anything about that. I've never heard Martians doing anything as far as creating the moon as a habitat at all. I would probably be more amenable to believe that they just landed on planet Earth. If we would think of Mars as a planet that once had oceans and vegetation um, and animal life and intelligent beings, as Joe McMoneagle remote viewed, if we accept that his remote viewing of that, it seems more reasonable to me, just conjecture, seems more reasonable to me that they would, instead of like creating a moon, just land on Earth, because Earth would have been very similar to Mars.
Yes, I think the reason for this was because without a moon around the Earth, we wouldn't have like the moon brings all of the gravity or the waves and the movement and the solar eclipse the sun, it blocks the sun, it gives you day and night, and without having that it was like, I don't know, put there. This is just theory, obviously, that I'm expressing. But let's get back to your statement where you said that you were told by someone higher up that reptilians are on the opposite side of the moon. Something else that was brought up, and you were not the only person to bring this up, actually. I believe it was Jason Giorgiani that also brought up a remote viewer whose conscious self is being held captive for traveling to the dark side of the moon too many times. And his body is being safely held here in the United States in a top secret facility. But why are we allowed to go back now? Because now we're planning on going back to the moon. I believe it's China. That's Japan. I'm sorry, I forget which country has just landed something there. What are your thoughts? Is it a treaty that maybe we made with them that allows us to go back?
It's absolutely no problem landing on the side of the moon that faces Earth. It's the far side. Missions to the far side have failed unless you are the People's Republic of China. Chinese missions to the far side have succeeded. Other missions to the far side have failed.
Why do you think that is? China allowed to be there, but we are not.
I don't know.
Wow, you just blew my
I would
mind.
have to speculate, and this is pure speculation. This is just pure speculation. You look at Asian culture, look at Chinese culture. What is the mythical creature associated with Asian cultures?
The dragon.
Exactly.
Reptilian.
That's just pure conjecture, pure speculation. I have no idea if there is a actual linkage between uh, the dragon and Chinese culture and the Chinese being allowed to explore the far side of the moon. I have no idea.
I mean,
Uh,
like this,
but you know, it's interesting. It's intriguing to think that, you know.
it is interesting. So China is allowed there, but we are not. This is fascinating. I'm sorry, I have to take a second to just handle that answer. You're blowing my mind right now. Okay, so now that we're talking about entities, I'm just going to go on to the next question, which is, in a previous interview, you have described the NHI as visitors, strangers, and residents. Could you
Yes.
please break this down for me?
I will break it down again. I've done so many times. This is something that I came up with that resonated with Mr. James Semivan, the other CI officer that's associated with the entire UAP NHI narrative. And he liked that because he said that kind of explains what we're seeing, that there are these aspects that are disturbing. He called it the disturbing aspects. Um, for example, Skinwalker Ranch. If there's an entity at Skinwalker Ranch, it's a very disturbing entity. It affects humans in ways that are somewhat harmful in terms of the hitchhiker effect. So they might be the strangers, disturbing aspects of the phenomenon. And then there are the visitors. They're the ones who, for example, the channelers, they like to say, I channeled these Octurans, I channeled the Pleiadians. These are the non corporeal spiritual beings, beings of light, as they would say. And that's what I called, okay, how do we account for them? They're the visitors. They're from somewhere far away, and they're making their presence known to certain humans. And then what I'm very interested in, because the residents could be, as you stated just moments ago, Martians who came here to escape whatever cataclysm happened on Mars, or it could be another at one time civilization from another star system that made it their home on the planet, along with other species from other places, and humans could have been part of that migration coming from what people say are Nordics, that we might have been um, populated um, as part of this Nordic migration from whatever star system they came from, which is why Nordics look like us. It's not that they look human, it's like we look like Nordics. Uh, so they could be the residents who have been here a long time. And so there are a lot of hints being dropped. If you parse what Lou Elizondo has said, what Jim Semivan has said, particularly Lou, when he talks about he's like 70,000 years. Um, that's just a starting point. Some have spoken about hundreds of thousands of years of these other civilizations that may have been here. That it will surprise us that we may not be the alpha species on the planet. There could be others who've been here longer, and it will completely rewrite what we know about human history. It would explain the so-called missing link that anthropologists continue to point out. How did we all of a sudden, if we are contemporaries of the primates on the planet, the primates, after all of these hundreds of millions of years, are still primates. However, humans are far beyond these primates, though we share the same close to the same DNA within percentage points. Now, how did that happen? Why are we not primates? Why are we so intelligent? So put that into the mix, and I try to come up with something that would make me comfortable with my take on the phenomenon. And I encourage your listeners to do the same. Don't take anyone's word for it. Don't take my word for it, or Jim Semivan's, or Lou Elizondo's, or Gary Nolan's, or anybody's word for it. Come up with something yourself that you could live with. That I believe this, and unless I get other evidence to contradict or support what I believe, I'm going to stay with what I know, and because I'm comfortable with it. And that's what I did by coming up with the strangers, the visitors, and the residents. I'm comfortable with, if you will, to explain the NHI. So I can live with that, and I encourage all your listeners to come up with something that they can live with. And don't be dissuaded unless you get firm evidence to contradict what you believe or to expand upon or amplify what you believe. So there you go.
I love that. I'm still reeling over China being allowed on the dark side of the moon. I'm sorry. This is the big one for me tonight, John. Good. We could end it here. No, I'm just kidding. Um, Interesting. Okay, so another thing that you have said is that you stated that the NHI control disclosure.
Yes.
Um, are they in control? But and I'd like to just like if we could break this down, because this is something
Hmm.
that we talk about a lot in the community. We everybody has a lot of opinions on it. I mean, obviously based on from what we're hearing. So I'm just curious, are they in control of our leaders, of the world? You talk about agreements. One of them just expired. So what are we looking for? If we could just break this down, I would love to do that.
Right. For the expiration of an agreement, I would then refer you to Victoria Whitney, because that's where I got it from. That an agreement has expired, and she knows the agreement. Um, but the NHI, and it's not just one group. It's not just grays. It's a diverse culture of many races, many types of races. Let's say. Um, there's no government on this planet that will prevent them from showing up in whatever craft they fly. No government can prevent that. So they can show up anytime they wish. So is that what they're doing now? Are they showing up in a way that will get our attention? And it seems like more recently, either we're looking up more or we have better ways of detecting them. Whatever that reason might be, it is fairly apparent that we are seeing some evidence of their technology. Albeit some of that technology might be our adaptations of NHI technology, but if they wanted to show up in their craft, they can do so. And that's what I mean by they're in control of disclosure. I in no way meant to imply that some of our leaders are reptilians, that they're shapeshifters. And that goes to who is that British? David, is it David Icke or David Icke? What is his name?
Oh, yes, David Icke, the
David Icke?
reptilian. Yes, yes.
Yeah, that's his theory. That's his theory. I don't ascribe to that theory. I think humans are humans, but he believes that they're shapeshifters in control of our government, and that certain individuals, certain members of royal families are actually reptilian. Uh, I don't know anything about that. To me, that's beyond comprehension to me. I just don't believe that.
I'm glad we cleared
Um,
that up then. I'm glad that you were able
so
to
I
say that.
don't personally believe that. If your audience, members of your audience want to believe that, they're free to do so. Is again, believe what makes you feel comfortable to explain things to yourself. I'm all for that. So we may not agree what that might be individually, but Fit, I'm comfortable with you believing that. So that's my message to your audience. But I don't believe
I
that.
think you're going to fit right in here, John, with the community because basically we all uh, have different beliefs. We all have different thoughts and processes. Some of us are thinking, that our government leaders all over the world are, maybe it's not reptilians, but that they may be hijacked in some form or in some sense. Maybe this is the way we cope with how evil they are in doing some of the things that they've done in the past and present. Um, Something that Jason Sands, hello, Jason, I see you in the audience. Thank you for setting this up tonight with John. Something that Jason Sands said that rings, in my mind a lot is that there is a war for this world, he said, quote unquote. And then my question to you is, knowing or something that you talked about the reptilians being on the dark side of the moon, you bring up Nordics. Is there a war between reptilians and Nordics? Is there a war between different species for this world? Is there a war between us and another species? Can we break this down?
Yes, that's why I stated in Spaced Out Radio interview that I don't ascribe to they're all space brothers and sisters coming to save us kind of thing. That they're all benign, they love us, and they're coming to save us. And anybody who says that they're not all space brothers and sisters, they're spreading disinformation. I happen to believe that there are adversarial relationships amongst the NHI, and those adversarial relationships might have spilled over into certain NHI supporting certain governments. And so, if you go back into history, um, if you look at some of the early conflicts amongst humans, they all invoke their gods, right? So we're going to war with those folks on the other side of that hill, and because our gods are true and their gods are false. And oh, by the way, we want to take their land, we want to take their water supply, their crops, their fertile fields, their farms, so forth and so on. But we're doing it with the blessings of our gods. And in that sense, humans have been influenced by that type of thinking. So if you look at it from a historical perspective, that's already has happened. You can even look in the Bible where the Lord God Almighty said, you will smite these people and just kill all the women and children, and it's in the Bible. Don't leave any of them alive. Take over their land. I mean, they did it in the name of God, and wars have been fought in the name of religion. So in a way, our human conflicts may have been influenced by our own belief systems of who these gods are, that some of these NHI may have set themselves up as gods, and that humans worship them because their technology is so fantastic and they are able to do things that we can't explain, that certainly they must be gods. So you can think of it that way. So yeah, there are conflicts amongst them. As far as the NHI controlling uh, governments to the point of setting policies, foreign policies and domestic policies of any government, I don't believe they do that.
Okay. Um, so, and my next question to you is: have you or will you be testifying to the ICIG or with congressional members publicly or in a skiff about any of the four items that you are not allowed to talk about via the CIA?
I have no reason to go to the ICIG because I need no protection. I am not a whistleblower. I say, with the understanding that if I cross a line, that CIA will contact me and let me know about it. And what I've been contacted about uh, were Nazis, Mill Labs, and finally 2027. That they were very uncomfortable with me talking about these topics, but I was never prohibited from talking about them. So there's really no need to go to the ICIG unless I am an active employee of the intelligence community and I feel like I need protection. I don't need any protection whatsoever. I went through the CIA pre-publication classification review board. They looked at all of those 74 slides, every one of them, and told me they're completely unclassified. You can distribute these to the public. You can talk about these to the public. And I've done so. This is the reason why I'm speaking with your audience and you right now. Absolutely no constraints against me. As far as speaking before Congress, there's really no need for me to do that. I don't know anything about any particular program. I was never read into a program concerning reverse engineering. That's what Congress would like to know about. They could care less about uh, people's personal feelings about UFOs and aliens. They don't care about that. They care about how did the U.S. government um, utilize the technology and may have created something without Congress's approval in the expenditure of funds. That's what they're interested in, and I have no information about that.
Right, right. It's so interesting because there are so many experiencers and abductees that really prove that something is going on and need help from, the government to protect them from this. It's interesting that the Congress members are really only interested in tech than they are, you know, the various other aspects of the phenomenon, which brings me to Fringe. Hello, Fringe. Fringe's question. She's an experiencer and an abductee, and she is asking, are you aware of any means, method, or technology that can stop the abductions? If there is, what is it?
If the abductions are done by humans, I don't know of any technology to stop it. If the military abductions, people have witnessed what appear to be humans in military uniforms accompanied by some NHI species. Um, I don't know how to stop that at all. I have personally requested through deep meditation, my own personal mindful meditation practices. When I go into meditation, I set out an aspiration and a desire out there to the cosmos. Please leave me alone. And so I don't have any kind of adverse experiences in terms of NHI taking me somewhere. If they do take me somewhere, and they have taken me in the past, as many of your audience members who have listened to my prior interviews, where I talked about my personal experiences, my only anger at the NHI was that they brought me back because I don't want to come back. I want to go with them. I want to go take a ride out there to wherever they are, to look at the universe, to be able to travel into space like them. And please don't bring me back to this planet. And so, interestingly, personal story, my wife and I have a pact that if the NHI take us, we'll go with them, and we don't necessarily have to come back to each other. So she's more than willing to leave with the NHI as I am. So we gave each other permission to do so, and that helps with a happy marriage because she too is an experiencer. I married a lifelong experiencer myself. Otherwise, it will be very difficult to talk about this in this household. But she and I, we have absolutely no problems talking about any of these topics with each other.
Wow, that's really beautiful. And you guys have, yeah, such the opposite with my boyfriend and I. I told him that if I was ever abducted, I would be like in an action film trying to get back to him. Very different, but I have not had experiences. Thank you for sharing that. Um, I hope that the two of you stay together for as long as you can. Oh, that really is
Thank you.
heartwarming. Thank you for sharing. So I would like to move along to audience questions. I'm going to bring two people up at a time. I ask that you guys be respectful, which I know you can. You're amazing. I know that you've got some really great questions for John. First, we're going to start off with Doomer. Doomer, welcome to the stage. John, please meet Doomer, and we'll go from there.
Okay.
Hey, John, this is Ulrich. First of all, Sarah, you're making UFO Twitter history right now. And of course, you are as well. John, I have tried to guilt trip, shame, bully, kidnap, abduct multiple people that you are named as a mentor to bring you in here, and I have failed. So I'm really grateful to you and Sarah for finding that X account and making your way in here. I also watched a good chunk of the interview you did with Dave on Spaced Out Radio. My question to you, and I know you might get a call from Semivan here, so Semivan, put the phone down. It's about what you just said regarding you should form a belief that gives you satisfactory explanations that's comfortable for you, and I respect that a lot. But unfortunately, I'm somebody who specifically looks not for what's comfortable, but for what's true. And when I listen to your statements regarding the channelers, where Anjali and Bledsoe, that you say we should take them seriously, as well as Lua Lizando's orientation toward the phenomenon, saying like, oh, get a hobby, wait till 2027. All of that makes sense, except, and maybe I'm projecting, John, but what I hear is something that seems logically impossible, namely that the threat of a catastrophic disclosure is greater than an actual cataclysm. And for me, the only conclusion I can come to is that we're already under continuity of government protocols, and most of us just have been selected to not survive. I'd like to know from you, can you give me a more logical conclusion to come to, and why any of us should be paying our taxes from now until 2027?
I really cannot. I do agree with one thing, that the world changed in the United States on 9/11/2001. And at that point, I do recall within CIA, we had several continuity of government operations exercises. And we were well rehearsed as to who goes where and who gets to go someplace where they will be safe and who has to be left behind. I was very aware of that within government. And we're not talking about the general population of the United States, but within the government, certain individuals, because of the office they held, would have to survive, and others were expendable. Now, in terms of paying taxes and whatnot, I mean, that's your personal decision. I don't think that I believe that, if the President of the United States will admit that there have been visitations of non-humans on this planet going way back, and that we know that they're here, and that not only that we have exploited some of the technology and developed things ourselves. And oh, by the way, here's one of the races we worked with. If the NHI will allow us to do so, I don't think, I think it would not be as harmful as them just showing up out of the blue and then having to explain it after the fact. So I don't know if I adequately explained my answer to your question, but
I think people who, yeah, sorry, I don't want to cut you off,
go
John.
ahead. I would appreciate you amplifying what you were trying to say.
Well, I think you actually did answer it, and I think people should pay attention very closely to your words, because I asked if you could come up with a better explanation for why catastrophic disclosure would be more of a concern to a government than an actual cataclysm, and it sounded to me like you agreed with me. So
Right. Yeah,
I pay close attention to your
yeah,
words.
right. So if there's a catastrophe, like a natural catastrophe, whatever that might be, a tsunami, a wildfire, or something like that,
Or an
um,
extinction level cataclysm.
Oh, that, and well, yeah, well,
I think that counts as a catastrophe.
yeah, that is the reason why Space Force was created, to prevent to support planetary defense and prevent a space-based cataclysm from happening. So there are technologies within Space Force to address that issue.
Do you think if the president came out and said, "Oh, by the way, um, there's also an extinction level cataclysm fairly imminent," do you think that would also fall under the rubric of something that we could warm ourselves up to within the next 24 months?
Right, and if you say that, are you talking about an external celestial body striking the Earth?
No, no, I'm referring to cyclical cataclysms that explain why 98.5 of our percent of our history is essentially lost to the amnesia of the human species.
I'm lost there. I
Well,
don't know about the amnesia.
most of our civilization, right, our recorded history goes back 6,000 years, and carbon dating suggests,
Oh, yeah.
at least 200 to 300,000 years. So divide 6,000, into 200,000, 300,000.
Right.
That's a reasonable
Yeah.
number.
Yeah. It's my personal belief that we may have destroyed ourselves many times over, in some way, shape, or form, and that all we have are myths and legends of what was. And I believe that's a source of a lot of the myths and legends concerning these past advanced civilizations. So that may have already happened many times, and somehow we are able to adapt to that, and perhaps a new species will come forward from that. For me, I hate to say this, but if humans disappeared off the face of the earth, I could care less, because the earth will still survive. There'll still be oceans, there'll still be animal life, there'll still be plant life. If there's something that got rid of humans, the planet will be fine, and it will probably evolve another intelligent species eventually. And maybe we are the result of something in the past that may have happened, and all we have, not an amnesia, but all we have are myths and legends. So, for example, if everything got wiped out, if all technology got wiped out, I have in my hand my iPhone. And I know that there's such a technology at one time called an iPhone, and that we had these cell towers connected by microwaves that we were able to communicate all over the world at one time. But I can't reinvent that. I can't remake it, but I can write about once upon a time we had this technology. And so, you know, I think the Earth would be fine. I don't necessarily think that uh, human survival is necessarily tied to Earth's survival. Now, if there's
Doomer,
Yeah,
something
and John,
are you?
cataclysmic that took out
I'm,
everything,
I'm
then I would say that's different.
John, I want to thank you for your candor, for coming up here. I really do appreciate it, and please do come back and keep your X account. And anybody you follow, they probably won't unfollow you; they'll probably stay following.
Right.
So
And
thank you so much, sir.
thank you for addressing that. The only reason why I have an X account again is because Sarah invited me to this X space, and I didn't have an X account. I used to, and I got rid of it because I just got tired. I got tired of social media because there's so much garbage out there. And I thought at one time, oh, maybe I can address the garbage and trying to clean it up. No, it just creates more garbage, and I get personally attacked and by people who absolutely have zero credibility. Um, and so I just gave up on that. But I'm glad to be here tonight.
Well, I have zero credibility, and I'm happy to ask hard questions, but I'm not here to attack you. So
Thank you.
if you can, hold on to it.
Sure.
And
Thank
thank
you,
you.
Thank you.
Doomer. Appreciate you. Let's go on to Dr. Dolce. And you guys who have requested, I've got a list of names. We have John for another 49 minutes. So we're going to get to all of you at least. So please be patient. John, thank you so much. Please let me know if you need a few minute break.
We're good.
Eric, go ahead. Dr. Dolce, Eric, are you there? Okay, while we are waiting for Eric, I will add Jay Just to the panel. Jay Just, please go ahead.
Oh my. Okay. Hi John. Thanks for being with us. I hope you join us again. We're really missing like voices from your side of the aisle to inform us and and answer questions. So one of my questions is I saw you on Spaced Out Radio, I believe, and you were talking about the people from age of disclosure and how those people know more than they're saying. So my question to you is if I don't know if you can, but if you could tell us anything that's important for us to know um, about, maybe what we should know about the whole phenomena, you want to call it that. What's the most important thing? Christian, your mic is on.
Yeah.
Christian, just hold on a few moments. Jay just is going to go, and then we'll go right to you.
What's the most important thing? And I don't know if you've said this before, but do you think that humans were kind of tampered with, like we were kind of tampered with by another species as well?
What got left out of the age of disclosure were the personal experiences of some of the witnesses. For example, those of you who have heard Jim Simivan before talk about his experiences, he and his wife both experienced NHI intrusion into their home. All of that got left out. So the producer and director of the Age of Disclosure was not interested in our personal experiences. He just wanted to know the nuts and bolts of anything about this program, this reverse engineering program, and the fact that the NHI are real and their technology is real. And oh, by the way, the US government and perhaps other governments have exploited this technology for their own purposes. That's all he wanted to convey. So that's what's missing from the Age of Disclosure. Perhaps it
Okay.
wasn't as, perhaps because what we're trying to do is the Age of Disclosure was not meant for all of us who are well versed in the topic. It was meant for the vast majority of people who have no idea that this is a thing, who don't know what UAP means or NHI means, who have no idea of what happened at Roswell. And I meet these people in my retirement community. I live in a retirement community, and I meet these people, and they have no idea about anything other than, oh, that's a science fiction movie. I saw a science fiction movie about that. And I try to say, well, you know, that might be not science fiction. That could be science fact that's fictionalized, and they have no idea. So that's what the Age of Disclosure movie was about. And I don't know if I addressed your complete question.
Yeah. I actually have one more question more important than the one that I asked you because I think I know the answer intuitively. But I wanted to ask you a question regarding like the amount of people in your uh you know in like how many people are really involved in this and how many people actually know the truth, and do you think there'll come a time when we stop going round and round on this little Ferris wheel, and how much do experience like how much do we as people who have studied this and read the books and followed the podcast, how much are we informed? Like, do we know everything about this whole about NHI and our place in the universe and that sort of thing? Because I think that's kind of important in consciousness. Like, is there anything you want to tell us about that?
I myself would like to know a lot more than I do. I know very little, in fact, um, about anything to do with any kind of program. As far as NHI presence and NHI technology, I was exposed to some of it, not to the extent that I know exactly what we did with the technology. I've heard of what we did, and I saw that. I know for a fact that we did something because I saw the manual for how the propulsion system works. I saw the cover of the manual that was a compartmented manual that I did not have the clearances to see. But two of my employees who work for me was briefed on exactly what Roswell is all about, and was briefed on the program and what we did with the technology, because there was actually a manual of operations of how the propulsion systems worked in UFO. And I do remember seeing UFO propulsion on the cover of the manual. And it was from the Defense Intelligence Agency. It wasn't CIA, it was DIA. So that's that. And so as far as other information, I don't know if anyone who knows everything, and anyone who says or implies they know everything, they're not being forthcoming. They're not being honest, because no one knows everything. Even people within the program don't know everything about the program, because the program is subdivided into many, 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 many levels of effort. And if one team hits a roadblock and can't go further, they don't know who else is working on it. They just stop. They can't go any further. And maybe another team can go further and they made more progress. But that team won't know about any other team. It's so dispersed in that way, probably for security purposes. Now, there's got to be somebody above that. And so who that person is or persons are, I do not know. I do know that anything in the Pentagon that is a program has something called a PEO, a Program Executive Office. And I do believe they might be a Program Executive Office for this topic. Somebody at the very top who probably has a good idea of who went where and what went where. And my understanding is that the official head of that is the Undersecretary of Defense for Acquisition and Sustainment. Acquisition and sustainment, not intelligence and security. That was the position that Chris Mellon held as a Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense. But there's an undersecretary higher than that, acquisition and sustainment. Many of our covert and clandestine programs within CIA, we had to go to that person because it involved some interaction with the Pentagon. We needed some kind of military support, and we can't do that on our own. We have to go to the Pentagon for that. So they seem to be very well versed in a lot of these high level, very deep and dark compartments.
Thank you, Jay Just. Christian, please ask your question.
So, speaking of, Air Force and gatekeeping, Christopher Mellon dropped like a year ago or so. He said in a signal leak, he said, what did they say here? He said, we now know the management structure and security control systems owned by the crash retrieval. We also know who recovers landed or crashed UAPs under what authorities. We also still know that a highly classified memo by a Secretary of the Air Force in the 1950s is still in effect to maintain the cover on UAPs. And then he says, this is what I want to ask you about. We also know the SES-2, who's the Air Force gatekeeper. Do you know exactly what the SES-2 means?
Yes,
Okay.
yes, I do. There are executive level officers in the federal government. SES means Senior Executive Service. That is a person who is appointed into a position higher than the general schedule. That is, I was a GS-15. Lou Elizondo was in the Pentagon. They call it GG-15. David Grush was a GG-15. I was a GS-15. That's the highest you can go in the federal government, short of a presidential appointment. And so in CIA, we had Senior Intelligence Service, SIS, and Jim Semivan was in the SIS. And Christopher Mellon was in the SES himself. SES-2 is just the level, SES-1, SES-2, SES-3. That's just like, consider that to be the equivalent, the Pentagon equivalent of a general or an admiral, and the number following SES is like, you can think of it as the number of stars. So it could be SES is a civilian general with 2 stars. Think of it that way. So that's a very high official in the Air Force.
Yeah, the Air Force seems really guilty. Okay, Sarah, can I ask one more question?
Sure.
So, what do you think about Immaculate Constellation? heard you talk briefly about it, but it said it was like the parent SAP. I think that's what it said, parent SAP, when it comes to UAP. Just want your opinions on it.
I
And
never said it was a parent SAP.
no,
I
that's what
said,
the document said, I believe.
oh,
That's what the document.
that document, I read it again today in preparation for this 𝗓𝗂𝗂𝗂. I read it again, and whoever wrote that was not well informed as to how we collect against any target, NHI or the Chinese or the Russians. They were very misinformed. It's someone who has not had intelligence community experience at that level. And secondly, that document by Schellenberger, he cites the State Department Office of Global, I forget what it was, but basically it's the State Department's Public Affairs Office. And the State Department Public Affairs Office has absolutely zero authority to clear that document for public release. Zero authority. So I looked at it and say, well, giving it some level of credence, elevating it to, oh, maybe there is something about this. To me, it read like Immaculate Conception is the name of a targeting system, a system of systems. They cited signals intelligence systems, they cited imagery intelligence collection systems, measurement and signature collection systems, so forth and so on. These are systems that we had in existence for decades. And however, these systems were never tasked to collect against UAP. There was no formal tasking. Anyone in your audience right now who has served in the intelligence community know that nothing happens in the intelligence community in terms of collecting against any target, UAP or otherwise, unless first there is a tasking requirement. There needs to be a tasking requirement, and that tasking requirement goes to somebody known as a targeting officer who will mate the capabilities that we have in the inventory to address the tasking that the analyst wants. To me, it seems like Immaculate Conception was that type of process. If you have the impression that Immaculate Conception was designed specifically to collect against UAP, that is completely wrong, because the collection systems that we have now, managed by the intelligence community, can collect against UAPs, can collect against Iran nuclear, can collect against North Korean intentions on the South Korean border, you name it. That system is intact, and all it needs is tasking. Now, I know for a fact that when I visited one of the places that collects and processes imagery data, known as the Aerospace Data Facility Southwest in Las Cruces, New Mexico, that facility, when I visited, along with my colleagues in the ODNI and CIA, they were complaining that they were collecting this anomalous data in the imagery frame, and they were trying to clean it up. So they were collecting things already, and they were trying to get rid of it. The same with the Chinese balloon. The Pentagon says, well, you know, we were filtering all this stuff out before. I think that's a false statement, but that's another show. We're filtering this out before, and now we're not filtering it. So that process of not filtering it, of actually processing these anomalies as actual targets, that is what Immaculate Conception, Immaculate Constellation was all about. There is no specific UAP collection systems at all. We're just using what we have because they're really, really good, and we're just tasking them. Oh, by the way, don't ignore these lights in the sky anymore. Collect against them.
Thank you, Christian. Rocky, please go ahead.
All right. Thank you so much, John, for doing this. I appreciate you taking your time. So you had said that talking about Nazis made the
Yeah.
agency uncomfortable.
Oh, yeah.
So this is like one of my deepest rabbit holes I've kind of gone down. It's super fascinating to me, this connection. Can you tell us, first of all, which interview that I can listen to where you towed the line on that subject?
Yes, absolutely. I would go back to my 2021 slideshow with Jay Anderson of Project Unity, where I went through 74 slides. I did talk about the possible Nazi influence as far as our early interest in UFO. And at that
Awesome.
time, I kind of suspected that we recovered a UFO. I did not know that as magenta. I did not know it was 1933, but I got an inkling that that occurred. And it wasn't until David Grush talked about it that I was able to fill in the blanks that I had myself. But I encourage you to look at those slides.
Yeah, I'll definitely check that out. I'm just curious if you would recommend to me, as like somebody who researches the topic, would you be more inclined to recommend researching that breakthrough, like the 𝗓𝗏𝗂 thing, the paperclip stuff, or do you believe that they like? Do you think any of the phenomenon itself could be attributed to projects that they were working on in
Yep.
South America?
Yep. I would go to Joseph Farrell, who has written about this, and also Annie Jacobson. She also wrote about this.
Okay, great. Appreciate you.
And also Harold Malgrim knew about the Nazi connection.
Awesome. I appreciate it.
Sure.
Thank you, Rocky. Brian, welcome to the stage. Please go ahead.
Hey, thank you, Sarah and John. Thanks for being here. I had the pleasure of meeting you at the Rialto Theater for the Lou Elizondo talk.
Yes.
And your wife, and you guys are very gracious. I just want to say that. So thank you for doing that.
That wasn't my wife. That was a lady friend. Leave it at that.
Okay, we'll leave it at that. I want to go back to, you initially talked about the Maelstrom incident.
Yeah.
And I know you didn't want to get in. You said that they did disable the nuclear part of it. Now,
Yeah.
it's my understanding that they disabled the logic coupler, which is located in the nose cone as part of the guidance system of the Minuteman missile.
Underneath the nose cone. That was
Underneath the nose cone.
Yeah, that's the layer. That's the computer, the inertial guidance computers. And there was a hard drive in there that's actually a spinning 6,000 RPM hard drive. Some of those missiles had failed hard drives, but not all the missiles had failed hard drives in that guidance system. They had something called VRSA, voice record subassembly or something like that. They failed, and it had nothing to do with it had something to do with the maintenance of the missile, that is, the readiness of the missile, but not necessarily the operation of the missile. Be that as it may, when any component in that missile fails, whether it's in the launch tube, in the silo, inside the actual launch control center, or in the missile itself, if any component fails, there's a no-go for launch. And so you suspect, once in a while, you'll have failures. Maintenance needs to go fix something. But it's extremely, extremely rare. And this is what the Air Force report addressed, that how rare it was for all of those missiles to fail with the exact same symptoms.
Yes, and I heard when they bench tested them that they were all running negative voltage.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know if I'm telling you stuff I shouldn't, but yeah, I mean that's what I heard, and I'd be curious to know if you've ever read anything about that, or if they ever figured out why that happened. And that'll be
I
my
think
last
they did,
question.
because they
I appreciate it.
actually hardened the missile against failures like that. So that was the Minuteman II, which we were bringing online. And after that was the Minuteman III. And the Minuteman III addressed a lot of those issues. Very reliable missile, the Minuteman III. And they're replacing that with something called the Sentinel system. So Sentinel system is being test launched right now from Vandenberg over to the Pacific test range. And so we're replacing our Minuteman IIIs eventually. They're very, very old.
Are you good?
Thank you,
Are you
John.
good, Brian? Okay,
Yep,
thank
I'll drop
thank
down.
you very much. Go ahead, Lana. Welcome to the stage.
Thank you. And thank you so much, Sarah, for having this space. And John, thank you so much for giving us some time. I was just wondering if you could please elaborate on what you had mentioned a little bit earlier about our moon being a craft. I'm not too sure if I'm using the right word here, but I would really love to hear more about that.
Yeah, craft was something I came up with. That's not to mean it's a spaceship, but what it is to mean that it seems to be an artificial construction of some sort. And you need to go to NASA. I believe NASA actually had data where when they did seismic studies of the moon, it reverberated within the moon as if it was hollow.
Very interesting. I have one more follow-up question, if I could, Sarah. Um, John, do you happen to know if the Chang'e mission from China had done any kind of research on that? Because I know that happened in 2019, 2020-ish.
My understanding is they found a very rare element on the far side of the moon that has something to do with quantum computing, that they needed this for quantum computing to occur more efficiently. And I forget what that is. Is it helium-3? I'm going from memory here, but I think it might be helium-3 the Chinese discovered. And for some reason, helium-3 figures into quantum computing. And so that's all I know.
That's all good. I really appreciate your time. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you.
Thank you, Lana. Go ahead, Nathaniel. Welcome to the stage.
Hi, thank you for having me. I have a line of questioning here. What was mentioned before was a military abductions, as well as the history of private research, perhaps with the military technology. 𝗓𝗏, magenta was mentioned. So what I would like to ask broadly is about any kind of non-state actor, say a private transnational cabal. And I wonder if you know anything specifically about Prince Hans Adams of Liechtenstein III. He's been involved with 𝗏𝗏𝗏 and 𝗓𝗏𝗏 and private research. And I wonder what you could maybe tell me about that connection, as well as anything with private research, Knights of Malta.
Um, that's a lot to unpack. First of all, I am not aware of this prince in Liechtenstein. I don't know anything about that. As far as the Knights of Malta, they have a very interesting history of who were members, and they were key members of the intelligence community, the founders of CIA that were members of this. James Jesus Angleton, for example, Bill Casey, who was director of CIA for the Reagan administration. I'm hoping I'm not misquoting there, but they were key members of the intelligence community who were members of Knights of Malta. So
perhaps writ large, then private research.
Private research. That's the question that I'm struggling with myself, because I was told that a multi-billionaire is very interested in funding disclosure, that is, and funding private research into the technology. And I
Well,
don't.
exactly. Prince Liechtenstein is one of those people. His family
Okay.
controls about $300 billion in assets,
Okay.
and has influence with 𝗏𝗏𝗏, who you may
Yep.
be familiar with, as well as 𝗓𝗏𝗏.
Yeah. Okay. So that's an example that you provided for me. I didn't know about, other than in general terms. What I do know about is that a lot of these organizations that cropped up, it'd be interesting to look at who's funding them. That who are the deep pockets behind the scenes with their own private agendas. So that's a matter of research for others to conduct. But I take your point that, yeah, if if 𝗓𝗁𝗃𝗃 is dealing with the prince in Liechtenstein, yeah, that's of interest to me. That sort
Great,
of,
thank you. I'll yield there if you don't have
yeah.
anything more about it.
No,
I find it fascinating, but
yeah,
thank you very much for your
yeah.
time.
Nathaniel, thank you very much. Christopher, you're up, and then followed by Dr. Dolce. But really quick, I just want to say I have then Ursula, Ashton, Brian, Robert, Tupa. So let's just be wary of the time. We have 23 minutes. I want to make sure everybody can get a question in for John. Thank you so much.
Hey, John, thanks so much for joining us. I'm wondering if, okay, let me see. I'm wondering if you are at all a religious or spiritual person, and how that might interact or with your perception of the phenomenon. You know, are you a spiritual person? Does the phenomenon play into that? And do you think the phenomenon has implications for religious belief more broadly among the human population?
Great question. I'm a Catholic in perpetual recovery. That is to say, I am a non-practicing Catholic, and I do consider myself more along a spiritual person in the sense that I have come up with my own theology that works for me. And so I'll leave it at that. And I do believe that there are implications for disclosure within the religious communities, these communities of faith. I did not see the Age of Disclosure movie. I don't know the content of it. However, when it was being produced, I heard that there were supposed to be some key representatives of the world's major religions in the film. And I don't know if they were actually included in the film.
Amazing. Christopher, are you good?
I'm wondering if you can just elaborate on what implications you might see for religions that you're aware of personally.
Well, for those who are, there are people who sincerely believe that we're dealing with the demonic forces. And so I'm not going to criticize people's personal beliefs. If that's what they believe and it works for them, that's fine. They can live their lives accordingly based on that belief. But I do believe that you will find the Bible is actually science fact. And if we were to rewrite the Bible based on what we know about NHI, it will prove the fact that we were divinely created by a non-human intelligent being. So I ask people, do you believe in extraterrestrials? And they go, no, I don't believe that. That's just garbage nonsense. And he said, do you believe in angels? So sure, I believe in angels. It's in the Bible. Are angels human? No, they're not human. So you do believe in non-human intelligence, don't you? See, I just turned the question around against them. So I think the Bible is full of Bible is an account of experiences. And if you look at the lives of saints, a lot of them relate, and Diana 𝗂𝗁𝗃 can speak to this, a lot of them relate to experiences that sound very much like our own experiences of the NHI phenomenon.
Thank you. Thank you, Christopher. Dr. Dolce, please go ahead.
Yeah, before I make a comment, hi, John. I wanted to ask you, if you don't mind, what portion, if any, is your heritage from the Japanese or Native American?
Yes, interesting you say that. I am Spanish, Italian, Cherokee Indian, and Japanese. My mother was Japanese. My father was Spanish, Italian, Cherokee Indian. The Cherokee Indian was my great-grandmother on my father's side. And I was told by a researcher, a government researcher who looked at AHI and experiencers and studied them, that the Cherokee Indian is very interesting, as well as Celtic heritage. He said a lot of the intelligence community and special operators, that is, special forces people who've had these experiences tend to have either Celtic or Cherokee Indian heritage.
Thank you for sharing that. I just wanted to comment that because of my fortunate relations with people that are connected to the agency that you work with, I've been told by somebody who's been around the agency for over 45 years that, and this is in your favor as far as anybody that might be a skeptic, that the CIA would not do any kind of deception operation that would include somebody such as yourself. So if anybody out there thinks, is in the back of their mind thinks that John Ramirez is part of some sort of deception operation, I would say that that is not true. The second statement I would make is that that I want to thank you, John, because it's very rare that, and you know this, it's my belief that because in all likelihood, and I have no evidence of this, that the CIA probably respected you for your patriotism and your honesty and your truthfulness, that they would even consider you might be one of the few individual humans on this planet that they would allow to speak on these matters such as you have.
Well, I would say that there are other members of my agency out there speaking, as you know, Jim Semivan and others who have come forward. They may not have advertised their affiliation with CIA or the other intelligence agencies in the intelligence community, but there are several of us out there. And my motivation is I don't see any national security concerns about releasing the original craft, the original metamaterials to civilian science, to academic scientists. Because what we, the United States government, did was weaponize this technology. And I know that if this technology was allowed to be researched by civilian science, they will not build weapon systems to destroy everything. And some of what we did were, weapon systems. So that's my my end goal is to release the technology so that we can benefit from it, particularly medical benefits from this technology. I could care less if we can warp drive to 𝗂𝗏 Reticuli or any other star system. I don't care about the propulsion systems. I don't care about the craft. I care about the technology that would benefit us to help solve problems on the planet, not devise new ways to more efficiently destroy the planet. And that's all what the Pentagon is all about.
Thank you,
Okay,
Dr.
one last question, if you don't mind. So is it fair to assume that certain people within the intelligence community would see it as a threat if we were to release this information? And do you think that that's why what's being blocked is because it's more of a control, that we might possibly live in some type of control matrix where there are other entities beyond humans that might be manipulating, we'll call it the matrix, the human reality, so that these technologies are not released?
I don't know if we're living in a matrix. I do know that humans don't want this technology released. Those in certain positions in government and as well as the defense contractors don't want this technology released. There are others who are outside of that world who don't want the technology released unless they're the ones to control it. And that was my concern about the corporatization of disclosure, that there are a lot of efforts out there outside government to disclose, but then what is their motivation to disclose? Do they want control of that technology for their own benefit, for their own enrichment? And I oppose that. I'm hoping that in the end game that we'll be able to release this under the auspices of some international body, for example, just to use an example, United Nations, that they will be able to then control that for the benefit of all and not necessarily for the advantage of certain segments, just because they're extremely wealthy people and they can buy the technology for themselves.
What do you think the
Sorry,
likelihood is
I'm so
that
sorry,
non-humans
Dr.
are
Dolce.
controlling us?
Dr.
Okay.
Dolce. Dr. Dolce, please. I'm so sorry. I have to pause you there. there are 4 other people that are waiting patiently, and our time is running out with John. So thank you so much. We're going to go to 𝗓𝗏. 𝗓𝗏, welcome.
Hey Sarah, thanks for having an awesome space. It's so awesome to hear. Like I had all these questions and they kind of just went out the door when John said he has native blood in him. John, I'm Dana. So welcome to Sarah's space. It's so awesome to hear you speak about your all that you have, your knowledge, and just going back to your experiences, your experiences with your wife, are they the same 𝗓𝗁𝗁𝗍 that have taken you both? And like what 𝗓𝗁𝗍 is this? Are they like the tall whites? And also going back to the craft, I'll just ask my questions really fast. The triangular craft, because I've seen many triangular craft, and you said that most of these are reverse engineered. And you also alluded to them having the V-shaped craft, and you said we have no saucers. So are all triangular craft, are they all reverse engineered craft, or are some of them 𝗓𝗁𝗍𝗁 craft?
Okay.
Thank you.
There's a lot to unpack there, several parts of your question. My wife and I have had separate experiences, and she has experienced a blue being, a female blue being that surprisingly, when I showed her what Jason Sands shared at the UFO conference in San Francisco, she resonated with that particular drawing. Said, "Oh my gosh, that's the blue guy," but it was a blue woman that she saw. And she's also had experiences with what she calls the angelic realm. My experiences are very similar to, in the sense that they were hooded. They were hooded cloaks. They wore cloaks that were hooded with 𝗓𝗁𝗍𝗶 van, and they were in no way harmful to me at all. And they tend to be humanoid because I think they had 2 arms and 2 legs and a torso and a head. So there was some kind of humanoid entity. I've already counted 1 reptilian. And that was the one where I was annoyed and I punched it because I was woken up from sleep and I punched it. I was so mad that it woke me up. And following that experience on successive nights, when I woke up in the middle of the night, there was a green mist with little lights in them, a green mist in my bedroom. And when I looked at it, I felt a sense of calm and peace, and strangely enough, a loving sense from them, a protective sense from them. And so that was my experience. And did I address all your questions?
Yeah, I know I asked the ones about the triangular
Oh,
craft, but
triangular.
that,
Yeah, yeah.
if there's, yeah.
I would say this, that if it's aerodynamic shape, if it's an aerodynamic shape, it's likely that it's our craft. Also, it could be an 𝗓𝗁𝗍𝗁 craft designed to operate on the planet. So I'm not saying that all 𝗓𝗁𝗍𝗁 craft are triangular and all engineer craft are triangular. They may come in different shapes and sizes, but to me, one that exhibits aerodynamic properties might more be related to something we have designed.
𝗓𝗏, thank you very much. Ashton,
Thank you, Sarah.
welcome to the stage. Please go ahead.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Ramirez. First time, long time. So 2 general overall questions, kind of broken up into parts. I watched your interview, or I guess your video on Project Unity.
Yeah.
And so my first question is, have you seen Eric W. Davis's name on a bigot list? Or do you believe he knows how to build a warp drive or builds warp drives for the defense contractors?
I have seen his CV submitted to CIA, where he worked on projects, extraordinary projects that he has not publicly talked about, because he was applying for a CIA position in my office, in my parent office, the UFO Legacy Office from the 1940s up until the current iteration of the office, which is the Weapons Counterproliferation Mission Center. He was very forthcoming in what he did with the Air Force from his office in Las Vegas. So it appeared that he had a lot of knowledge about a lot of the Air Force programs related to this phenomenon a lot of the technology, including propulsion systems, that he has not publicly discussed.
Awesome. Thank you for that. Follow-up question. You, in that same interview, you used plasma orbs as an example
Yep.
and also gave a personal experience related to plasma orbs. My question is, do you believe that we've solved fusion, cold fusion with plasma? Do you think that the energy source for UFOs is 0 point energy or plasma or cold fusion?
I don't know anything about the propulsion systems that we may have solved. I don't know that. I do know that we understand how the propulsion systems in some of the UFOs work because I saw the manual, the UFO propulsion systems manual. It was not a dirt of a few pages. This was a very thick Defense Intelligence Agency manual of operation
What year was
that
that?
my engineer had.
Roughly? What year? If you don't remember?
This was in 2004, 2005, when the Orb Working Group was in operation. This is before ALSAP.
Got it. Yeah, I saw Eric W. Davis's ball lightning paper around the same time with the Air Force, so just thought it was interesting. Thank you very
Yeah.
much, sir, for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Ashton. Robert, please go ahead. Welcome to the stage.
Thank you for joining us tonight, John. In a recent X Space, Anjali mentioned that she was informed that CIA had a time travel program named Maven. And I was just curious, are you aware of that rumor? Have you heard any information about it? Can you add to that?
I can't talk about that. Read all you want into that. I know of a compartment that might have dealt with that aspect. Not necessarily that alone, but these are like technologies adapted from NHI technology. I don't know if Steve is in our audience tonight, but he talked about it when he was in an X Space with Courtney Marcansani. So there is a program. If you mention that name to a person who's cleared for it, and they will shut you down immediately. And that's what happened to him, to Steve. He mentioned that name and he was shut down. It wasn't M-A-V-E-N, Maven. I have not heard of that. But I like the fact that the M is in there. So the M is very much in there, and that's one of the letters in the program.
Oh, was it Marvel? Did I mess up? Sorry.
I can't talk about anything like that.
Thank
I
you.
can't even
I appreciate
acknowledge that it's a real thing.
Got it. Thank
You
you.
got to read between the lines.
Robert, are you good?
Yep. Thank you.
Thank you very much. John, welcome to the stage. How are you? Please go ahead.
Sarah, what a great space. Mr. Ramirez, thank you so much for your time. I want to switch gears into a little more woo. I'm somebody who in 97 received a massive download after a huge experience that I had. I'm a lifelong experiencer. And it contained timelines and millions of years of data. And so I wanted to talk to you. And I used to just think that it was just some crazy thing that happened to me. I didn't know that other people had experienced similar things until I started coming on X, hearing other people's stories, starting to do a little more research into it, and finding out so many people have had very, very similar types of downloads. And I just wanted to ask your opinion on, what do you think of these downloads? What are we to make of them? How do we trust it? And who do you think's giving us these downloads?
I don't know who's giving us these downloads. I receive downloads, but I think it's whatever source of whoever, whatever entity, when I meditate, come forward out of that meditation. It's interesting that you receive a volume of downloads because a lot of experiencers say, I was just overwhelmed with so much information, and you may not remember that all that information, but it'll when you need to recall it, it comes forward. I don't know who's giving you the downloads, but I've heard that same story.
Yeah, that's exactly. I mean, I literally received what I would consider 65 million years of data. It was in fucking insane. And it took me decades to like process, and I call it sort of entering the nexus. Like when I work on it, when I write on it, I have to get into the right mind frame to access the data. It's
Right.
always there,
Right.
but it's not just easily accessible. You know what I'm saying?
Right. Right.
And so you believe this is a legit thing. It's not just us coming up with it on our brain, that we're actually tapping in to some sort of, whether you call it a Akashic record or, something out there.
Yes, I do believe that. The bigger question is, why you? What is it about you that they
Yeah.
would share this? And that's something that I grapple with. Why me? Why was I led to CIA? Why did I have an interest in CIA? Everything I did in my life led to where I'm at right now, talking to all of you fine folks about this topic. Why was I put in a position where I learned things? And why am I sharing it? Because my download, the most recent one, was you know things about us and you need to share what you know. That was when I saw the orb craft over the mountains here in Tucson.
Yes, for me, it felt like very much something that was put in me, and then it was like I have to get it out of me. Like,
Right.
and it's so difficult. It's a
Yeah.
hard process for me to try to get it out, and I'm a terrible writer, so it's one of these things that why and what do I do with it? You're right.
Right.
Those are the two main questions I have
Yes, I
myself.
believe you're not alone in grappling with those issues. I think there are others who feel the same way.
Thank you, John Strader.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you. John, I have one more question from the audience, and is it okay to ask you?
Sure.
Do you have time for one more?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay, thank you. The question is, in your past interviews, you mentioned that the core secret for the United States government was the discovery that the occupants of the Roswell crash shared genetic similarities with
Right.
humans. In
Yes.
Peru, the tridactyl specimens, now in the process of being declared cultural heritage, have been found to share around 30% of their DNA with humans.
Mm-hmm.
Are the tridactyls the same biologics that the United States government has been recovering, or are they different?
I don't know about them. I don't know the Peru recovery, and if you mentioned Roswell, any other what David Grush calls biologics that we recovered. I don't know if they're all the same. This information came from CIA, Office of the Chief Scientist, and the Director of Science and Technology. They sponsor that one day, whatever you want to call it, symposium or whatever, and the topic was UFOs, alien DNA. Um, the I would say the interest in certain families that may have a preponderance of this alien DNA, and a future technology that will um, then spread this information throughout the world. And this is in 2001. This is before smartphones and the explosion of information technology that we had back then. This was in an era where America Online was inundating our mailboxes with the CDs so that you can have America Online on your PC. I mean, this is that era. And they were saying that there will be an explosion of technology so that we can get all this information out. And look what we're doing now. So, yeah, I think there's something to that. I don't know is exactly what was found in the Roswell craft, what the biologics may have been. It's interesting that David Grush said biologics because anybody who served in the Navy on a submarine knows that marine life, when they listen to marine life on board that sub through the sonar, passive reception of these sounds underwater, they call it biologics. So I don't know if that has any relation to it. I do know that something was recovered from under the sea by CIA with the Office of Naval Research, and that technology or whatever was recovered was transferred to a defense contractor in Seattle, and the only one I know is Boeing.
Thank you. That question was from, I just want to give that credit, 𝗗𝘂𝗫𝗄𝗏. Thank you very much for that question. John, we have reached your firm 2-hour, 8 p.m. Pacific time mark. I just want to thank you very much for the time that you shared with us today, with the UFO community, with myself and my selfish questions. I hope you had a good time. I hope you might someday in the future join us again.
Thank you very much for having me. I enjoy answering questions, and that's what I find very rewarding for me personally, because it helps me to center myself into what I know and what I believe. Um, and I love the fact that your audience is so well educated on this topic, and that's a very rare thing. And I appreciate everyone's questions.
We appreciate you, honestly, for you giving us your time. There are other people with questions, but that I hope you understand that John has a firm stop, and we will hopefully hold another space. And you'll get us talking for the next couple of days or weeks. I'm sure. I'm sure someone will hold an after space after this. After this space is over. So, John, thank you so much. I hope you have a great night. Everyone, thank you so much for coming in and listening. Thank you to all of the speakers who came up and asked fantastic questions. We have a lot to unravel. The fact that China is allowed on the dark side of the moon is going to haunt me now. Thank you so much. Thanks, John.
Absolutely. Good night, everyone.